Before we begin, 3 messages. What mobile platform do companies like eBay, NBC Universal, the Los Angeles Times, Razorfish, and PayPal use to build their cross-platform native applications? Titanium by Appcelerator. They aren't alone. There are now over 25,000 apps deployed by Appcelerator, which has been called the Rosetta Stone of app development. And you can start now for free. Just go to www.appcelerator.com for more information. So, you've taken some of the advice that has come from Untethered.tv guests, built an app, and now you're turning your attention to generating some hard-earned revenue. Then you should be looking at Pontiflex app leads. Some of your peers who are using app leads are earning CPMs 100 times the industry average. And if you need any other reasons to start, I'll give you 2 more. You can run sign-up ads from top brands, the ones that you recognize, and it won't take your precious users out of your app. Go to appleads.com, that's appleads.com, to sign up. When my company needed to develop a key mobile product, one that I was counting on as a new source of revenue, I knew exactly who to turn to. Macadamian. They delivered on time with incredible attention to detail, and I was able to get product into customers' hands faster than I ever thought possible. I've personally known them for 10 years, and they do make great products even better. Check them out at www.macadamian.com. Hello everybody! Welcome to Untethered.tv. This is that place where you have come to rely on me to bring some mobile rock stars and understand what their business is and how they're growing their business and maybe some lessons that you can extract from that. Well, this is a great business lesson that we're about to dive into. We've all heard about this. I think anybody who's in the mobile space has heard about, over the last week, a company called Shifty Jelly out of Adelaide, Australia. Was actually a featured application for free in the Amazon App Store, and there was a lot of fallout from this because it not only did 100,000+ people download the application when it was free, which isn't the big story, but the fallout from that and the conversation that has happened as a result of that has been astounding. It's been a very polarizing. Well, I mean, I think it's been polarizing. It's been split evenly between people who are behind Shifty Jelly in their move, or behind Amazon in their move, and we've decided to kind of dive into it a little bit deeper with Russell Ivanovic, who is the co-founder of Shifty Jelly, and all the way from Adelaide, Australia, where it's in the middle of the night. Russell, thanks for doing this. I appreciate you coming on and actually telling your side of the story. I think it's wonderful that we can get you on to do this.
Yeah, no problems at all. Thanks for having us on.
So, you know, this was one of those things that kind of consumed everybody last week and in the beginning of this week around what happened with the application that you guys put up there. But before we get into all that, why don't we talk about Shifty Jelly and how long have you guys been around? What do you guys do? What other applications have you created? Let's just get the nuts and bolts before we go into this issue. Yeah,
sure. So Shifty Jelly kind of started by accident about 3 years ago. So there was myself and my business partner Philip. We're both enterprise sort of Java developers. We've been working in this industry for about 7 years, and the iPhone had come out a year before, and then a year later Apple had brought out their Appstore, and we were really interested in that. No one back then was really making any big money or anything on there. I guess it was more just like a geeky interest for us. So I kind of downloaded the SDK and forgot about it, and then it was only a few weeks later, actually, I snapped my Achilles tendon. And, I couldn't walk basically for 8 weeks. I had to have crutches and, the special moon boot thing. And so I had a lot of time, I guess, sitting down. And that's when I kind of picked it all back up and thought, you know what, I'd never really done Objective-C. I thought, maybe I'll just try it, I'll try putting together an application. So I made a little bit of a kiddie-type application called Pocket Sounds. It's still in the store today. It's free. It's not much. It's just a little soundboard thing. You push the cow and the cow goes moo and that sort of thing. And then after kind of getting the hang of that, I used to work with Phil. We worked at the same company. I said, I reckon the one thing that's missing on this iPhone is Australian weather, because I'm not sure what it's like in Canada and the US, but when we get our iPhones, we get it with, it's got all the Australian cities in there, but they're all the weather's wrong basically. Like it's all just from somewhere in the US, and and we've got our own sort of Bureau of Meteorology, and their data is completely different and more accurate. And so me and Phil just bounced it backwards and forwards. We said, what if we built a weather app? And so yeah, we'll build a weather app. And then it came time to pay. I think back then it was $120 we had to pay to Apple, and we thought, $120, are we ever going to sort of see this money again? We thought, whatever, we'll pay the $120, we'll kind of see where it goes. So I think over about a month and a half, just sort of on our couches after work, late at nights, just over chat and everything else, we built this app called Pocket Weather Australia. We put it into the store, it got approved by Apple. I think this was way back in September of 2008, or possibly even August. I think it was September. And it went straight to number 1 in the App Store, which was a massive shock for us. We weren't expecting that. We were on sort of edge back then. I don't think we even had 3G iPhones, so we're refreshing the App Store. I think I was at like my brother's Bucks party or something, and Phil was somewhere else, and we were at number 30, and then number 25, and then number 20. And we
so you're watching this as it's happening.
Yeah, we're watching it, and we're watching it very slowly because we didn't have a 3G back then. It was edge, so it took forever to refresh the store, and you can just see it sort of climb up the chart. And then the next day actually got to number 1, and we were blown away. We had no idea, there was that kind of level of interest, in a weather app for one, but even in the App Store.
Was it a free app or was it a paid app?
No, so that one was $2.50 Australian.
Okay. So just out of curiosity,
and it has.
Did you made your money back? You made your $130 back?
Yeah, we kind of made that back in a few hours. But like I said, it wasn't a strategic business move. We didn't really even have a company back then, and then all of a sudden we were getting all this income from this application. It was quite strange. We had to figure out, how are we going to structure this business? What do we do about tax? What do we do about this? We were quite clueless, really, and we were both still employed, sort of full time.
Yep. And
then we're sort of a bit slow on the uptake. So fast forward, I guess, probably almost 2 years later, really. We'd kind of earned all this money, and we were still, earning very good income from this Pocket Weather Australia. And then, we're working 40 hours a week in our day jobs, and then we're working probably another, 20 or so hours a week on the couch. And I had a young family, and I'm still young, but I'm not as young as I used to be. And it started to sort of wear me down a bit. And then one day, Phil and I got together. We're like, why on earth are we working 2 jobs? Like, we're working one job that we don't really enjoy, which is the day job, and we're working this other, sort of, I don't know, amateur job, off the couch. And it started to get really frustrating. There's also lots of different things we wanted to build and do, but we just didn't have the time. So we thought, forget this. We're going to quit our day jobs, and we're just going to give this a crack. So this was September of 2010.
Yep.
We started Shifty Jelly as a proper company. We hired ourselves both as employees. We got an office. We did, all that sort of stuff. And then we've kind of been going sort of ever since then. I think now we've got maybe about 8 different applications in the iPhone App Store. We've got 2 on the Android market, and that's kind of where it all began.
Did you ever have you found that perfect application that has mimicked the weather application yet?
No, this is the curious thing. We haven't. Like, we always joke that was pretty much a fluke. Like, everything we've kind of done since then, some of it's been okay, sort of successful, but everything we've done sort of since has never sort of equaled that. I guess we're almost like a one-hit band, really. We made that one-hit album, and we've never quite been able to sort of scale back to those kind of heights. It's still been fun, and we're still sort of earning a full-time income from it, but it's not. Yeah, it's not as easy as it first seemed. We thought, we've had this one hit. How hard could it be to make something? So the first thing we tried, we made a world weather app. We thought, hey, we've made an Australian weather app. Make a world weather app. Suddenly you've got 100 times more people interested in it. But there was no sort of real uptake on that. Like, it was quite a hard slog. There's a lot of competitors, and I guess the Apple one is maybe even good enough for most people, like in the US and places like that. So that never really took off. We tried something called. Oh, what the hell is it called now? I think it's called Weather Watch now. We have to rename it because long story, but and that was kind of like let's throw something quick together. Like it's kind of like a desktop clock with weather and alarms and that sort of thing. And that didn't really take off either. And then our final thing was, let's forget about weather for a while. Why don't we build like another app we really want to use? Which was back then there was no good apps for podcasting.
Mm-hmm.
So this was December of 2010, I think. We thought, why don't we build a podcasting application? I think the only other one in the store was Podcatcher, which had kind of had that whole history of being rejected by Apple and then later approved by Apple, and it was all quite tumultuous. And back then, we were trying to be really conservative with version 1 as well, because we thought, what if we spend all this this month's worth of effort. And then Apple just goes, no, sorry, no podcasting allowed.
Yes. It's because it's competitive.
Yeah.
And so you created Pocket Cast. So we're going to come to that. I think that the weather application is very interesting, and your the way you compare it to being a one-hit wonder is very interesting as well. I've had a couple of people say to me that building mobile applications is like that. You're that hair band from the '80s that made a lot of money off of one song, and then you always try to recreate that. But it's funny because you found a need with Pocket for the Australian Pocket Weather. And I don't think that there are two nations that are more consumed with weather more than Australia and Canada. I think that, if you'd done one for Canada exclusively, I think that would have been installed on everybody's iPhone because it's a topic of conversation daily. We started our conversation, at least I did, as a Canadian.
Yeah, that is literally the number one topic of conversation here. What's the weather doing? Is it raining? Is it all those sort of things?
Well, but it's interesting because, you hit it once. How hard can that be? Right? How hard? Look, our first app, #1. Come on.
Not only that, but we didn't sort of sit down and have a business planning meeting and go, where's the niche? What niche do we need to fill? Who are our customers? We just built a weather app. We didn't even expect to make any money. It wasn't a calculated decision. It was just something we needed and we built.
I think it's hysterical that you guys are debating whether or not you pay the $130 to actually join the Apple developer group, and then
that's the funny thing. We almost didn't. That almost put us off. We thought, that's a lot of money.
That's a lot.
You're never going to see that again.
That is hysterical. So it really is. So I think that's one of those things. It's that when I talk to developers quite often, they say, we bounced around a couple of ideas. We chose one based on our gut, and that one accelerated and actually maybe not made it to #1, but it certainly was very profitable for us. And then we started thinking too much, right? And then we started thinking about, okay, well, let's build a business around it, or build a business plan, and what is our next product, and what's the rollout, and scheduling, and they quite often they say, well, that's where it all falls apart when we built a business around the idea, as opposed to finding another product that in our gut told us that it was the right product. You feel like that's kind of what went down with you guys, or was it something different?
I think definitely some of the apps we sort of built in between sort of Pocket Weather and Pocket Cast were really we were kind of thinking from a business point of view. We thought we've got this code base, we've got all these servers and things that do all the weather parsing, and it seemed like the logical thing to do. Not a lot of extra effort, and suddenly you've got a world weather app, or you've got like a variant of our other weather app. And I guess from a business point of view, maybe that kind of made sense. But yeah, looking back on it now, it was, it doesn't really make any sense at all. It wasn't sort of things we were passionate about. It was more we were just trying to, not spend much time and sort of get apps out there. And that's one of the things we really kind of got back to with Pocket Cast. Like, it's something we really were passionate about, something we wanted. It's something, before I even released it to the store, I was using it every day because I travel sort of 30 minutes, 40 minutes to work in the car. So I've got it through the Bluetooth on the way in and on the way back. And Phil was the same. He's on the bus and the tram. So it's something we were using like every day, and it's something that we actually needed.
And that's much more of a same kind of feel, right? There's I talk to a bunch of companies in the States that say, what's your market for it? And they look at me like, oh, Rob. This is a product that we would use. Okay? Yeah. That's why we're building it. And we, being this age, this demographic, with these kinds of friends, with this kind of social life, this is what we use. This is what I want to use. I know my friends will want to use it, and I know my generation will want to use it. Oh, forget about the planning, because we know that this is something that we intrinsically know. And they're right. More times than not, they're right, which is something to be said about your gut. Go with your gut. Go with your gut. So
and I think...
Go ahead.
So I was going to say the flip side of that is also that I suspect 3 years on now that the App Store is a lot more crowded.
Yeah.
Even if you do build that sort of right product that you really want to use and that other people want, is that there's a lot more choice these days. So literally after we made Pocket Casts, a lot of people must have had the same idea at the same time, because I think a week later another podcasting app came out. A week after that another one came out, and it's obvious they hadn't copied us. They'd been developing this obviously probably for the same amount of time we had. Really, it was almost like all 3 or 4 of these companies all had the idea at the same time, and all sort of came from a slightly different angle. That's something we weren't expecting as well. We thought, we're going to be alone in the market here, and suddenly 1 week after launch, there's 5 podcasting apps, and then there's 10 podcasting apps, and then it kind of went like that a bit.
Well, yeah, it's an interesting observation because it seems that good ideas group around each other. So, during South by Southwest this past year in 2011, in the spring, it was kind of like the group chat menagerie. Everybody was building a group chat, and it all landed at South by Southwest. It was probably a launch date. But it wasn't just one company. It was 5 or 6 of them that had been building it and then launched at the same time. And I think that people congregate around good ideas and weaknesses in the market, and then, unbeknownst to everybody else, they're all building the same thing, and then they land almost at the same time. It's pretty amazing how that happens. It's a cycle.
It's unbelievable. Even actually with our Australian weather app, after we released that, about 2 weeks afterwards, another one came out that did pretty much what we did as well. And it's the same thing. Like, this guy had exactly the same idea we did about the same time, and we just managed to get, to the market first at that time. But
pretty incredible.
Yeah.
One of the lessons here that I would call from this is that a lot of app developers who are building for iOS and Android or any other platform, even BlackBerry, they build with kind of a big nation in mind, like the United States, right? So they want their app to be launched in the U.S. and build into the U.S. and they're building for a mass market. But I think what you've just proven here is that you can make a good living building for your country. Australia is not big. What's the population of Australia?
So I think last time I checked, Australia was about 20 or 22 million. So it's not that big. I guess the one advantage we have is that we seem to be a bit sort of iPhone crazy over here. Unlike the US, I think we have 4 or 5 times more iPhones than we do things like Android devices. I think it's 2 or 3 million people. So almost 10% of the population has an iPhone, and I hate to think how many of them have an iPod Touch.
Yeah.
There as well. But you're right. It's still, compared to the US, it's still like a tiny little market. But like I said, we make 2 full-time incomes from that, so it's not that bad, really.
But it's the same in Canada, is that there's opportunities that are localized opportunities inside of the country that you're in, that you don't always have to target the US or the larger economies in order to be able to be successful in the mobile space. And then you can extend your reach from there. Which it's an interesting story, because most of the guys I talk to are in the States or in Canada, and they're targeting the U.S. And maybe they should be looking at other nations where there's a niche or a market opportunity.
I think especially if you live there as well.
Well, yeah.
Like, you've got the local knowledge. Things that people outside the country aren't really going to have. They're not going to know quite how people in Australia operate, and how our sort of Bureau of Meteorology operates. And we got quite lucky as well with them. We ended up approaching them. In fact, no, it was the other way around. So we put out this weather app. We stuck to all their terms and conditions and whatever else on their website. It was free data. It's government data. And then we got a phone call from them. Can you call us back? And it was some very sort of senior manager at the Bureau. And we thought, oh no, like we've violated some agreement here, and this is it. We're over. And he I called him back, and he said, look, I'm really happy that you guys have done this. Like, we don't have the resources or the time to build these mobile apps. We've been thinking about it, ever since sort of Nokia's and that sort of thing. He said, look, the only thing I need you to do is make it more clear that it doesn't come from us, because we've been getting a lot of phone calls from people saying, this is the best application ever, but can you add all these features? And at first they didn't know what these people were talking about, like pocket weather, like never heard of it, don't know who they are. So I guess it was lucky for us that we kind of had that relationship with them, and they were quite friendly about the whole thing, and it was good.
So do you give out numbers? Like, do you give out around how many people have downloaded this application over the period of its lifetime?
We give out the free numbers. So we have since then we've added a light version as well, which I think last time I checked was about 440,000 people had downloaded.
That's incredible.
And we don't like to give out the paid numbers. A significant percentage of those do go on to get the paid app, but I guess we always try and keep sort of the money side of things out of all the things that we report, because even the name Shifty Jelly, we kind of chose it not to be too corporate and not to be too sort of money driven, and maybe it's a bit idealistic, but we thought with a name like Shifty Jelly, you're not ever going to be in a boardroom with an IBM. We're outsourcing our IT services to Shifty Jelly. We just knew that. Knew that wasn't.
You never know, though.
Part of the reason for the name.
You never know. There are some odd names out there. Shifty Jelly would definitely, Yeah, with the business card with a little ghost guy on it. I think that give us a call. Yeah. So you glom onto a passion, which is weather in Australia, like it is in Canada. Podcasting in Australia. I mean, I listen to podcasts. I mean, obviously, I do this. Consume podcasts. So you decide, listen, we're gonna go out with Pocket Casts. And did you launch that first on iPhone, or was it on Android?
I think it was early this year. It actually launched on the iPhone, and like I said, we made the very first version very conservative. We had all these big plans for what we wanted to do, but we were trying to make sure that if it did get rejected by Apple, that we wouldn't feel like
you wasted your time,
invested months and months of time. And then ever since then, we've kind of always had this vision for it, and I'm happy to share it. We've never really got there yet, but we always had this vision of iPhone, Android, browser, desktop, all kind of in sync.
Yeah.
So if you're like me, you listen to it on the way in the car, and then you can fire up, Chrome or Safari or whatever, and you can keep listening, and you can share things with other people. You can say, hey, look, 20th minute in this podcast is excellent. You can see what other people are sort of listening to. These are all the plans we had sort of from day one, but we're not quite there yet.
Well, here, let me put this. If it's not on your roadmap, is that I'd love to bookmark for future reference. You know what I mean? So I love the idea that and we're way off here already, but that I'm listening to it in the car, and then I jump onto my desktop or my laptop and fire it up, and it starts where I left off. That for one thing, syncing is key. But the other thing that I do quite often is that I'm driving, listening to a podcast, and I want to be able to just, I want to grab a quote from it, or I want to reference it. I just want to be able to hit a button that says, okay, remember that spot, so that I can go back to it as a bookmark in the podcast.
Just to tease you, the version that I have on my phone has something very similar to that. Like, it's still sort of under development, but you can kind of be up to somewhere in a podcast and you can hit share.
Yeah.
And then you can share that sort of link with yourself or with other people. And what it does is it actually gives you like a link sort of directly into that spot in that particular podcast that you can then... So it is something we plan to bring out. But I guess with all these things, you have all these really ambitious plans, but when there's only two of you... And I'm the only one that actually does the iOS side of things. So Phil does all the server sort of stuff. So you realise very quickly that there's only so many hours in a day, and there's only so many things you can do.
Well, let me know when that goes live on the next version, because that's something that I have been dying for, and I know quite a few people have been dying for it as well.
Actually, can I tease you with it? Is that all right?
Yeah, please.
Let me get my Pocket Cast up here. Sorry, I don't mean to derail us.
No. This is good.
So I've got, for example, we've also kind of done a redesign as well. It should be nice and fuzzy there, so you're not going to see. But
no, it looks good.
There's like a little share button.
Yep.
So you can go, okay, I want to share the podcast or the episode or where I'm up to.
Bring it closer a little bit. Episode. Just bring it up there. Yeah. Okay. Oh yeah. Position an episode. I love it.
Yeah, so that's hopefully coming in the next version, along with a bit of a redesign as well. Like we were kind of never happy with the way the app sort of looks in its current form. We wanted to try and make it a bit simpler, a bit easier to use, and that's coming down the line as well.
Big digits like that, certainly readability, usability. I love that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I guess that's part of the thing when you build something for yourself. You don't necessarily anticipate how other people are going to use it. So we do this thing where we listen to weekly podcasts. So when we're finished, we delete a podcast. It never entered into our mind that someone would want to keep a podcast for later reference. The app was never really designed for that. There's all sorts of other little quirks to it that you kind of get used to after a while. But looking back, we just got a new designer on board about a month ago, and he'd never seen the application before, and he gave us a good talking down about all the things we'd done wrong.
I mean, UI is so important, obviously, and it's sometimes where the native application falls down. People would be would maybe call you crazy to go up against it. It's like why build an email or a calendar application? But some of them are done way better than Apple could have ever done, or you can find natively in the applications, so that there is a need for it or a niche. But usability is the key, right? Functionality, usability, wrapping it up so it makes it easy. So you went out with this on the iPhone first, and then when did you go out in? When did you launch, or when did you build for the Android?
I think this is just going off the top of my head. It was probably about 3 months ago, so it would have been a good sort of 2 or 3 months after the iPhone 1 came out. So I think we'd made the iPhone 1. We might have even made a version 2 of the iPhone 1. Like, we put quite a lot of time into it. And then at that point, we started to get a lot of emails from people saying, you know, are you going to do an Android version? Like, I'd really love this. I've got up my iPod Touch and I'm about to sell my iPod Touch. Or the more common one was, I had an iPhone, I've now sold my iPhone and I've got an Android, but I can't find your app. You know, where is it? People don't seem to understand that there's no magical button that you can push and, you know, make Android version now.
Make Android. Make BlackBerry. Make Windows Phone.
Yeah, make Windows 7. Boom, boom,
Exactly. Boom, done. Then, of course, it's easy on the desktop, and then bring it right over to iPad. You're done. What? That's a day's work.
Yeah, that's another one we have a lot of requests for. Like, can you do an iPad version?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I can understand the iPad version, especially if there's any video podcasts like this, right? It's the experience is much better as a sit back or lay back experience. Talk about the. I mean, what was the response for the iPhone version when you launched it? Those 3 months after launch, was it an active? I mean, were you satisfied with the activity that you were getting?
So initially we did quite well in Australia. I guess we've built up a bit of a name here for ourselves. We've got a bit of a brand. We've got not a huge following, but we've got a bit of a following. So we put it up out sort of worldwide, and the take up from Australia was quite good, especially in the first few weeks. But no, worldwide it's never really done that well. And even after a while in Australia, it kind of dipped off. And we've seen this thing since. Like, every time it gets picked up by a podcast or some kind of media, you know, you get the spike, and the spike sort of lasts 2 or 3 days, and then it kind of comes down to the dip. And it's been all right, but I don't think it's come anywhere near sort of paying for the amount of development that we've actually put into it.
Yeah, and I mean, did you market it through your existing mailing list, through your existing users? Did you market it through your existing app? I mean, did you push it out through the weather app? No. So we tend to shy away from a lot of that stuff. Like, we don't like advertising, and we really, unless it's done really well, we really dislike sort of cross promotion as well. Like, it always feels a bit like it cheapens your app when you say, "Hey, if you like Pocket Weather, you'll really like podcast." You
know this. I've seen a few apps maybe do it all right, like the Tapbots guys do it in a really classy way where it fills in the icons once you've got.
Yeah.
You know, there are other apps. I don't know if you've seen that.
But they're all closely related, right? So.
Yeah. But no, we didn't. So what we did marketing wise is we thought, you know, what's the best way to advertise a podcasting app is on a podcast. So back then we kind of tried to contact Twit, and I guess they're so big that they don't even answer emails. They'd never heard back from them. So the next place we went is the 5x5 network. I don't know if you've heard of Dan Benjamin.
Absolutely. Yep.
The stuff he does. So we contacted him, and he said it's, you know, this much for a full week ad, or you can, you know, get website sponsorship. And we thought it was $5,000, I think, back then. We thought, oh, you know, we don't really have $5,000. Do you have anything in between? So he's quite a busy guy, so corresponding via email was a bit interesting. But in the end, we kind of did this deal where it was, you know, it was $2,500, and we get mentioned on all these shows, you know, for a little spot. And I thought, you know, that's excellent. You got, I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of people listening, and surely that'll get noticed. But then, I don't know, it all kind of got a bit weird. Like, he was moving studios. I think he'd slammed his finger in the door or something. So we got a mention on 3 of the podcasts, and I was really happy about that. And then on the 4th one, he didn't mention it, and on the 5th one, he didn't mention it. And I sort of emailed him and said, you know, look, what's going on? I thought we were going to get a mention on all of them, and he was sort of sending really short responses because I think he'd injured his finger or something, and I couldn't tell. Like, is he being sarcastic? Is he? Because I have a bit of a sense of humour. I didn't know. Like, did he literally slam his finger in the door, or is he?
Is it a figurative?
Is he trying to be stupid?
Yeah.
Yeah, but in the end, he said, "Look, forget about it. Like, we'll cancel your invoice. Don't worry about it. You know, it's all too hard, and we've already got sort of next week's sponsorship lined up." And it all kind of fizzled out, actually, in a really weird way. So in some senses, we got 3 promotions for free.
Yeah.
But in the other senses, we kind of missed out on those other, you know, 7 or 8 that we were expecting. So.
Well, that's perplexing. Anybody in this business, anybody who's doing this for a full-time living, podcasting, that is. Here's a lesson: don't turn down money. You know, if you believe in the product, if it's something that your audience is going to use, and you believe in the product, I mean, that just seems ludicrous. But you know, I don't pretend to understand why anybody would do that. But
like I said, look, I don't think it was anything sort of malicious on his part. I think he was like one man trying to run an entire network and answer emails and process bills and who knows what else. And I think, like I said, he was moving studios and doing all these other things. And I think in the end, he just thought, you know, too much hassle. Let's forget about it. Like, move on, sort of thing.
Turn down some money. Good for you. I'll never do that. Just so you know, whoever's listening, I'll never do that. I'll never turn down money. You can start sending it right now if you like. Makes it easy.
Here's my PayPal account.
Yeah, just send me money. I'll give you my address. So you launched that, and then you still you had enough requests to convince you that, listen, Android, we got to go out with Android, right? So
yeah, and the other side of it is, like I said, we'd had 7 years of Java experience, which is the native language of Android.
So why aren't you on BlackBerry?
Is it?
Why aren't you on BlackBerry?
Is that Java as well?
It is, yeah.
Yeah. BlackBerry always seemed like a bit of a...
That wasn't
like
that wasn't a bandwidth lull. That was just an interruption. That was an awkward pause in the conversation. And, so your Java developers, you move into Android just because it's a language you understand.
Yeah, at the time we thought, if anything, we're more qualified to build an Android app, surely. And we also thought, for the first time ever, both of us can actually work on the client side of things as well. And so that was kind of the irony of it. The initial version probably only took 3 weeks. I mean, they were long weeks. We sort of set ourselves a deadline. We tend to do this thing that we lose focus very easily. So if we don't set really tight deadlines or something, it takes forever. It never gets done. So we said, look, in 3 weeks' time, we're going to have it out there. We'll do whatever it takes. And we worked sort of fairly long hours for 3 weeks. We got it out there. I guess the real kind of surprising thing is that, well, not surprising, but it was just as hard to get noticed in the Android store. And also, I don't know how much you want to get into this, but on the testing side of things, it's a nightmare. There's hundreds of devices, there's hundreds of flavors of operating systems, and the manufacturers, I never knew any of this. They do some really bizarre things. So you can have version 2.3 of Android on a Verizon phone, and version 2.3 on exactly the same phone on AT&T, and one will have a bug that the other one doesn't.
Yeah.
And we don't even get access to the Verizon builds here in Australia because there's no such thing as a Verizon. It drives me insane. As someone who really cares about quality and quality control, I mean, it literally drives you nuts. And I guess, not to jump too far ahead in this conversation, but that's what kind of drove me nuts about the Amazon thing as well. Like, it went out to so many people at once on so many devices we'd never tested on, and maybe 90% of those people had an excellent experience, but the other 10% had all sorts of weird and wonderful bugs. And
well, a lot of similarities. What Android is doing, or what Google's doing with Android, to what Microsoft did with Windows Mobile and Windows CE. That kind of put it on any device. Here it is. Here's the operating system. It's free. Just go and do it. And the splintering happened very quickly with Windows Mobile. And people forget that owned maybe I think upwards of a 30 to 35% market share in smartphone operating systems. And now it's kind of in the 4% market because it was splintered. And I think that I've heard this quite often, is the challenge of Android is that you could have 2.1 running on the same network as somebody with Android 2.3, and multiple screen sizes, resolutions, input mechanisms. There's something like 220 or 240 devices that you have to test on as a base to get it around if you want to do a global application. And it becomes a nightmare opportunity. Like, you've got to weigh that. Is that, do you go into that, or do you say, my application only supports these 3 phones with this operating system, with this screen resolution, or else you could get really hammered.
Well, the thing we didn't realize is that Google's actually done a really good job of the whole screen resolution thing. Yeah. We always thought that must be the biggest problem, but they've done a really good job for that. So they let you kind of design layouts per screen resolution if you want, or they let you let it kind of grow and shrink. And I mean, ignoring tablets for a second, but it's actually not. It's extra work, but it's not that hard to do that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it turned out that the hard thing was really that we'd made a podcasting application, so we were accessing the underlying, sound libraries, streaming libraries, network stuff, and that's really where we came unstuck, because all the other Android developers that we knew, they'd kind of made things with lists and tables and no problems, works on every single phone everywhere. And I guess we didn't realize that we kind of took Google's documentation as the letter of the word. But to give you an example, for example, on some Samsung phones, they ship a version of the media library that conforms to exactly the same programming interface.
Yeah.
But it's actually a completely different version of whatever on earth they're using, and it has its own set of bugs, and you've got to write for it differently, even though from a programming level it looks like you're talking to exactly the same thing. It's no difference. And then on the Motorola headset, there was this weird thing where you press the up and down volume keys, and it actually sends play and pause events to your app. So we didn't know that. We had a HTC and we had a Samsung phone and we had all the emulators, but it's these things that you just don't pick up. And I guess to other Android developers that have been around for a while, they say, of course it's like that. How did you not know this? Like,
of course the volume.
What's unusual about that?
Of course it takes a picture. What do you mean? Yeah. It's like, what else would the volume buttons do? Come on.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a. I mean, and they'll get it sorted out. I mean, Google's not new at this, and eventually it'll come to roost, and in a year or so, you're going to start to see that all consolidated and everything being standardized. It'll be much less open than they probably want it to be, but it'll be a little bit more structured. So
yeah, I kind of wonder with Google whether they wanted to be successful, and they wanted to be successful so much that they gave in to a lot of the carriers, they gave in to a lot of the manufacturers, and there's the argument to be made that maybe if they hadn't, they wouldn't have been successful. But maybe now that they are, they kind of seem to be clamping down on it a lot more.
I just read an article in the past day or so that says that, and I'm not going to substantiate this with anything, and that's not part of our discussion here, but that Apple is more open now than Google's Android platform. And you have to, with a lot of these things, there's a lot of criticism around Apple in the way that, I mean, for you guys, it was the same thing. Listen, we don't want to put a lot of effort into our app because the ultimate gate is Apple. And if they decide, look, we're not going to allow podcasting applications, then you've basically put all that effort in for nothing. So to put all the effort in and then have the gatekeeper be somebody like Apple, who has competitive products, so to speak, iTunes and the connections, you don't want that. But then the other side is that there's not a lot of malware floating around on the iOS platform versus Android. And there's not a lot of great, I think from the results that you guys had with the Amazon store, is that what's the expectation about Android owners about purchasing applications, and where's the opportunity to generate revenue when it comes to Android, because there's so much garbage in the Android app store as well as the Amazon App Store. Less so on the Amazon because it's curated, and they have to look at that and say, maybe we have to start curating our applications. So you launch Android, and was it almost immediate that you decided that you wanted to be on Amazon's App Store as well? Was that just an easy decision to make?
Well, it was maybe about 3 weeks later when we saw that we weren't really getting any uptake on the Android market. We didn't sort of really know how to do about it. I guess we didn't really understand the market back then either that well. Probably should have done a bit more research. But yeah, then we saw that Amazon was getting all this good press. Everyone was kind of hailing them as the savior for the Android market because I think Google's sort of improved this since, but their market was a real mess. You'd go in and every second review would be spam. Linked to some website, and because there was no approval process, stuff was just everywhere. Things were impossible to find. It was all very messy, and I guess we kind of bought into that. We thought, it makes sense. Someone like Amazon knows how to sell products.
Yep.
Presumably, if they make an app store, they also know how to sell apps. So it seemed like a no-brainer at the time. So much so that we didn't really read all the contents of their 80-page developer agreement or whatever it was. We only kind of skim read it, and we kind of wish now that we hadn't.
No kidding. But you join anyways, right? And I think that's a logical choice for everybody, is that Amazon understands merchandising. They understand how to push product, promote product. And they go in there with that intent, is that, look, they're here to make some money, or they're here to do something with your products, and that's what they've done. So like many Android developers, it seems like a logical choice. And so when you put your product in, what was the response? Did you see sales right away, or was it the same kind of tepid response that you had from the Android marketplace?
No, it was actually even worse than the Android market. So it was probably it was one or two sales a day.
Yeah, like
literally, and that perplexed us a little bit because we started to get 5-star reviews from people that had downloaded it, and it seemed really odd that 1 or 2 people a day were downloading it. It did perplex us, I guess, a lot, and also, yeah, because I think, I'm not sure what the case is now, but back then none of the competing podcast apps were even in Amazon.
Yeah.
So we, as far as I know, back then we were the only sort of podcasting application in there. So
then they come to you and say, and there's a reason we're so far into this episode, and we're now just talking about it because there is a history around your company that's much greater than what just happened, and I wanted to bring that out. And I don't want to dwell on this next part of it. I just want to get to the nuts and bolts of what went down, because the industry's covered this quite extensively. Anywhere you go, if you search Shifty Jelly online, and you'll find everything from TechCrunch and all the way down. but the gist of it is that they came to you and said, "Hey, listen, we want to feature you on the free product of the day," right? And then what happened?
And then they said, "Look, we know we have an agreement with you where normally we'd pay you 20% of your asking price when we give away your application. But they said, hey, look, being featured is such a great thing. You're going to have to accept 0% for that day. But we will also sort of feature you for 2 weeks afterwards." And right down the bottom was all this sort of non-disclosure stuff, like you are not allowed to tell anybody about this agreement. It has to be kept secret. And we didn't think much of that. We thought, this seems like a bit of an odd deal. Like, we get nothing. They get to promote their store. And initially this caused, like I said on the blog post, it caused a bit of a fight in the office. Like, my business partner and me were, like, I was against, he was for, and we kind of went backwards and forwards. But in the end, we kind of thought, look, we're not actually doing that well in Android anyway. What can it hurt to actually get some exposure? And okay, we kind of give up sales for a day, but they do sort of feature us for a week afterwards, or 2 weeks, I think it is. And maybe this is the kick we need to kind of get over the edge. And that's kind of where it all came about.
So when were you featured?
Well, this is the other funny thing. So in their emails, they made it sound like it was months away. Like, we have a full calendar and you'll be slotted in somewhere. And then literally the next day, and we were in the process of, our app relies on a server. So every time you search for a podcast or want to update a podcast, it kind of hits our server to see what's new. It just kind of takes a bit of the load off your phone. And we'd be making all these server enhancements because we knew when it got featured, what's the first thing someone's going to do? They're going to open the app, they're going to hit search, they're going to do this. So we'd be making all these code changes, thinking it was weeks away. And then it was 5:30 that afternoon. Phil left for the day. He's the guy that does pretty much all our server stuff. And my phone just started going off like crazy because we have all this server monitoring software. This is down, that's down. And I thought, what on earth has happened? And I logged in. I'm looking at the log file, and the log file is just going crazy. There's just thousands and thousands of requests going off in this log file, and I thought, like, what on earth happened? Like, I couldn't, for a good few minutes, I couldn't figure out, where these people had come from, what on earth was going on.
So you look at your bank account, and say, wait, the same thing's not happening over there as it is here. What's going on, right?
Well, initially we assumed maybe it's on some big pirate site or something, maybe someone's, suddenly got hold of it. And then I thought, maybe I should check the Amazon store. And I did, and there it was, front page. And we were getting, I think about every 5 minutes we were getting 5,000 new people download the app, open the app, and all do a search. And then,
oh my god!
So I had to call Philip, and he's on the bus at the time. I said, "Look, Phil, like the server's down, like nothing's working. All those optimizations we've made, can we?" And we hadn't really tested them. We said, "Can we deploy them?" And he said, "I don't know. I guess it's down anyway." So he's on the bus with his phone tethered to his laptop, deploying all these server changes as all these thousands of people.
He's on a bus, tethered to his phone, deploying changes. I love it.
It was literally insane. And then I think within about half an hour, we deployed all our changes. Things had started working again. Searches that were taking sort of 500 milliseconds were down to sort of 5 milliseconds, and people were starting to actually be able to use the app. And that's kind of where we started monitoring, because we have a thing on our server. We can see how many new people have, fired this up in the last 24 hours, 7 days, whatever, and we just saw that number go up, and it was 5,000, 10,000, 15,000, 20,000, and I think when I went to bed it was about 60,000, and we just thought,
oh my god,
we definitely weren't expecting that. We kind of googled it and tried to find some information, what happens when you're the Amazon app of the day, and all we could find literally was one developer comment, and it was a comment on someone else's blog post saying, it was terrible, I saw no sales afterwards, don't do it, sort of thing. And we thought, it's just one guy made a game. The game obviously wasn't very good. Like, who cares? Let's try it. We honestly didn't expect 100,000 downloads.
So it ended up, it's like kind of like the Groupon of applications, isn't it? When you it's people think that, listen, all the business I got from Groupon, is great, but ask anybody who will ever do Groupon again, 70% say, no, I'll never do it again. It was devastating to my business. And the other 30%, it worked very well for them. But this is obviously one of those situations where you got those, I mean, exposure to 100,000 people is great, right? Like the immediate reaction to everybody is like, wow, like you guys, like think about it, 100,000 people in one day, right? But that's not the reality, is it?
Well, there's kind of two things about it. So one is obviously the server went down because we weren't quite ready for it.
Yep.
There was those few little niggling bugs that I talked about on some devices, and there was also just the volume of people that was crazy to us that, you know, we just weren't expecting that many. And then, you know, we thought maybe that's not bad. You know, if they tell their friends and they tell their friends, you know, we should see a spike in sales. You know, it's only logical. But, you know, you looked at the Amazon sales, and the next day it was 16, and then after that it was 7, and then back to 2, and then it pretty much, disappeared. And we thought, and Amazon was actually featuring it on the front page of the store. And when we really realised something was wrong was when we were the number 15 top paid app. We were getting 8 downloads, and we thought, oh, hang on a minute. Like if you're going to be number 15 on any other store, you're getting like thousands of downloads, not 8 downloads.
You're making a living.
And that's when we realised, you know, the only reason people install the Amazon App Store, I suspect, is to get the free app of the day. That's the whole thing. Everyone else says, no, I buy it from Google because I get, you know, more regular updates. I get this, I get that. You know, why would I buy it on Amazon?
So what you're basically saying is that there's not a lot of paid activity happening on Amazon store right now. That was kind of what your conclusion that you came to as a result of being 15th, the top 15.
Yeah, well, I don't have an insight into how their rankings work, but I know with Apple, for example, it's a 3-day rolling average. So it's your sales over 3 days determines where your ranking is. Google, they used to do overall. I think they now do something slightly different, but it's the same. You can kind of tell, you know, this many sales gets you into this position. And as soon as we were number 15 with 8 sales, we thought, oh, hang on a minute, like something's up here. Exactly. I don't know. Checked.
But you know, it struck me as an interesting sales pitch that they used for you, which was, hey, listen, you know, companies like Rovio and Angry Birds and Cut the Rope and all these guys have used this service, and you know, it's a different pitch. I've also seen a lot of people say, look, you could have said no. But would anybody in their right mind say no to that? Maybe now.
I guess the problem is people look at the experience we had, and they assume that we knew that was coming.
Yeah.
So they said, well, you know, you could have said no. You're kind of an idiot that you didn't say no. But the fact is there was no data to even say what happens when you get featured. Do 5 people install it? You know, it could have been that 100,000 people installed it, and then thousands of people after that bought it. We didn't know. Like it.
Yeah.
We had kind of always treated Android as an experiment. We thought, you know what, we're going to regret not doing this if we don't. Because if we don't get that data, how on earth are we going to know? Like 6 months from now, we're going to be, you know what, we should have done that Amazon free app of the day thing.
And what about the people who have said, you know, like this is a bigger story, and I want to kind of go to that. But what about the people who said, listen, why wouldn't you have done an ad supported? I mean, obviously the speed with which this came was one thing. It didn't give you an opportunity. But, you know, when you looked at it and you looked at all the 100,000 people that have downloaded the application and the engagement that they're getting from it, was there ever an opportunity that you looked at and said, well, if we just did this, we modified it a little bit and threw it up there, we could generate some revenue from those guys? Or did you just say those?
Yeah, so
go ahead.
We did get a lot of people sort of suggesting that. And, I mean, there's a few things with that. One is, as a company, we're really opposed to ads. We hate advertising. We think it kind of, you know, cheapens your app. It just looks sleazy unless you get really high quality ads in there. It just, you know, looks like you're selling some bit of your app in exchange for, you know, cents. And the other side of it is that there were some people that had bought it on Amazon, and Amazon has, I believe, in their terms of agreement that says you have to give us the same app that you give Google. So we would have had to release to people that have paid for our application. We would have had to put ads in there that, you know, to hit those free people. And you might have made money doing that, but I can imagine you would have ticked a lot of people off. And as a company, we don't want to be in the business of doing that. Even if there's only 200 people to make angry, we don't want to. Yeah. We don't want someone to pay $3 and then get advertising as well. Like.
Yeah, I mean, I can understand that. So the other thing that is a little bit different is that yours is not just a straight device-based app. I mean, as you said, it goes to the server. It has an impact. There's a bandwidth cost. There's a throughput cost. So when you charge for an application, you're charging also for that service, the connectivity to your back end and to your servers and maintenance of that. Was there an impact on that? I mean, did you guys suffer
definitely.
from that?
So some people think that's a bit of an insane model, but it's actually worked really well with our Australian weather app. You know, ongoing sales, pay for the yearly sort of server hosting, and as more people buy it, you know, we might have to expand the servers. That's fine, and it seems to work fine as long as you've got a popular app. But the thing is, here we added 100,000 sort of new free people, and we had to ring up our hosting place and say, look, we need more RAM, we need more disk space, and we need more this, and all of this costs money. You know, it's not free, and not only does it cost you money right there and then, but it costs you money for the life of that product. So if the product never takes off, you're still paying these thousands of dollars sort of every year in server hosting.
So in the end, when this ended, that 24 hours ended, and kind of volume dropped back down to to what it was beforehand, maybe a little bit. I mean, if you're doing 2 downloads before, 2 purchases before, now you're doing 8, so it's a 4 times. I mean, that's great growth, man. And you're number 15 in Amazon's App Store. How many people? What's the load been like since then? Like, I mean, are you still experiencing that kind of over-the-top load from those 100,000 downloads, or did it just kind of peak and then kind of start to slow down again when in terms of app usage?
There definitely was a massive peak. I guess there's a lot of people who might not have even cared that much about a podcast, you know, grabbed the app because it was free just to check it out, opened it, you know, maybe added a few things and then closed it. But definitely a lot of people that got it for free are still using it.
Yeah.
You know, every day. So there has been that increased server load. It's nothing like it was on the day of the promotion, but it's still there. So we couldn't really sort of scale back the amount of servers we had. I mean, the other strange thing is after all the publicity that we've had, that we've actually been doing really well in the Google market. Like, we've been getting emails from people saying, you know, I had no idea you weren't sort of getting paid. I'm so sorry. Like, you know, can I send you money? And we're like, look, don't send us money. Don't be crazy. But
send the money. Come on. What are you doing?
If you want to buy it in Google, and we've had heaps of people say, yeah, I bought it in Google, no worries. Like, that's kind of been a positive side. But sorry, I'm getting ahead here.
No. But that's an interesting thing. Is that you know, the impact of all of this is that you've been very open about what it is that has happened. You know, and I think that it's great to share experiences, and your experience is going to be different from somebody else's. You know, somebody else who had enough time to react and maybe. Who cares? Throw in some ads to generate at least a little bit of revenue. Who doesn't have that kind of who's willing to do that? So your experience is your experience, but you went very public with it. Why go with a blog post? You're under an agreement with Amazon at that point, and then you say, listen, look, we got to tell people about this. Was that just a warning shot? Is that what you were saying? Is like, listen, developers, think about it before you go and do this.
Yes, I guess. You know, in some ways we deserved what we got because we said yes.
Yeah.
But I guess as developers, and developers tend to be very sort of black and white moralistic types normally, and we really didn't like the secrecy behind it. Like, we accepted the free, and everybody that contacted us still thought that we'd been paid. So we had a lot of people emailing us like, oh, congratulations, guys, you know, you must have made bank, and, you know, you did really well. You got, and back then we hadn't published our sales figures, but I guess people saw us as the Amazon free app of the day, and people we talked to on via Twitter and email, they were like, oh, you know, it's excellent that Amazon pays you guys, and, you know, what a great service. And this really started to make us a bit angry, I guess, that the public perception and the perception that Amazon had pushed is that we pay developers no matter what, and, you know, they get a good deal from us. And then the private thing they were saying to us is yes, you can have the promotion, but then you have to agree to this, and you also have to agree to not tell everybody about it. And that kind of almost pushed us over the edge. And then then the second thing that happened is they hadn't updated their administration area. So their admin area was still set up for the proper deal that we'd signed up to. So it actually showed, you know,
your revenue,
100,000 downloads, $54,000 of revenue. And for a second there, we're like, oh, hang on a second. Like, did we read that email wrong? Like, am I missing something? You know, and so we actually waited a month to get the payment report from Amazon just in case, you know, we got our wires completely sort of messed up. We thought maybe we should wait, and then we got the payment report for them. It was for, I don't know, for 3 months worth of sales. I think we got $700 or something like that. And it was, I mean, that's all right money if you're a hobbyist, but if you're trying to do this full time, you know, that's not even like, you know. And so we kind of looked at that and we're just getting angrier and angrier, and we thought, you know what, look, we should just pull out of their store, and we should make this public, and hopefully, and I still hope this, that the worst they can do to us is then kick us out of their store.
Yeah.
I guess we kind of counted on the fact that we were small. You know, we were in Australia. Most of their agreements seemed to be worded towards, you know, if you violate an agreement, we can boot you out at any time. We thought,
okay,
apart from the small sort of chance that we're going to get sued, you know, get our pantsuit off, there's probably not that much sort of risk in going public with this. And then hopefully the next developer that comes along can make an informed decision. So if they have a game, or they have something with downloadable content that they really want exposure for, you know, great. But if they have some kind of niche application like ours that kind of exposure might not be helpful, and then they also know, hey, look, potentially there's going to be no ongoing sales from Amazon whatsoever, and that's what led to the blog post. I mean, some people say it was a brilliant marketing move, but we had no idea like anyone was even going to read the blog post. Like, it's not. Yeah. I mean, you can't script those things. You know, we put it out there. You know, one organisation picked it up, another one picked it up. It went sort of, you know, viral over Twitter, and by the next day, you know, 200,000 people had read it or something like that. It was insane.
You should have put ads on the blog post, man. Like, you're missing revenue opportunities everywhere. It's like, but I think that's part of the thing is that, you know, this. I mean, this could have been the most brilliant scripted marketing campaign in the history of mobile. If you had thought this through 6 months ago and said, "This is exactly what we're going to do. We're going to document everything.
Genius.
We are going to get screwed by Amazon, and we're going to, and then we're going to build a blog." But you know, there were opportunities along the way where you could have said, you could have made money if you were a little bit unscrupulous. You could have put ads in the app. You could have put ads on your blog post. You could have done a whole bunch of things. You could have built an app that you were trying to promote and have that as you're on your website beyond the podcast app, but you didn't. So you know, if you look at all these stories, you're going to get multiple interpretations of this. But it doesn't seem like what you guys are trying to do is profit from this. And before we get into that, did Amazon ever respond to you? Did they ever come back at you? Did you get anything from them? Did they ever respond to this at all?
Not formally about the blog post. So what happened is after the blog post, we thought, all right, let's follow through. Let's remove our app from Amazon. And in every other store, you just push a button, you know, remove from sale. And so we logged into the Amazon area, and there's no remove from sale button. We thought, yeah, this is strange. So we found like a frequently asked questions on their site and whatever, and they're like, you know, to remove your application, you must send, this formatted email off to us. And we thought, okay, that's a bit bizarre. So we sent them an email, and we got a response back the next day saying, we'll only remove your application if you agree to remove it from every other store that sells in the US. And then they cited some part of our, serious, some part of our developer agreement, like 34A or something, you know. And it basically said that. It said if you want to remove your app from Amazon, you must first remove it from everywhere else that sells it. And we thought, that's insane. Like, it's our product. It's not your product. Like, why do you... Basically, they were saying if you don't remove it from the Google market, we're not removing it from our store. And
wow.
Which is it. That really, like, just angered us even more. Like, we thought, you know, I mean, if you didn't think they were sort of, you know, being a bit underhanded before, I don't know what all that's about. And so we sent an email response back saying, look, we'd just like to terminate our agreement. Can we just cancel our whole thing? We don't want anything more to do with you guys, really. And we didn't get a response for a good week. And then I think it was just this morning, I posted it on Twitter. They sent us, I'll see if I can find this. It's quite hilarious. It was almost like Arnold Schwarzenegger language. It was basically saying, you know, thanks for your request to terminate your application, something or other. You have been terminated.
Nice.
It's on the Shifty Jelly Twitter anyway. It's something like that.
Remember, Solly, I said
you have been terminated.
You have been terminated.
And we've had no sort of official word from them. That's the only correspondence we've had.
That's it. And I mean, so what this did was blew up in the blogosphere. It blew up everywhere. I mean, everybody picked this story up. And, you know, the conversations that I've seen are mixed, right? That some people support Amazon, some people support you, and it's probably even. But the people who support Amazon say you know, basically, look, you kind of knew what was going to happen, and you know, the whole thing is that you've created such an awareness around you guys now that your next products should be able to launch and you should be able to make a lot of money. So screw you guys. And then I've seen some great arguments in defense of you guys, which isn't you going out there and doing it, saying, listen, it's not about Shifty Jelly, it's not about this product, it's about the way that these agreements are constructed that limit the ability for the developer who owns the product to actually make any money during these, when they're featured with Amazon. Amazon kind of, or any of the big stores, can bully the developers into doing this. Because you also said that not only did you not get the 20%, which you agreed to waive anyways, so that's not the issue. You agreed, everybody agrees to that. That's not what we're fighting about. He said they also then, the week after this, reduced your price arbitrarily to 99 cents, just cause, right? So they were controlling your product without your permission, in theory.
Yeah, and this has always been we actually found out about that after we'd signed their agreement. Like I said, again, we should have read the entire thing, but
yeah, lesson learned, right?
Two things that Amazon can do is one, they can vary your price to whatever they want.
Yeah.
So they can sell your application for $10, $50, 50 cents. Like, there's no restriction on it, and you don't. All you get to do is request the price. You say, look, I'd like to sell for this much, but there's no obligation for them to honour that date. When they set a price, you don't get to approve the price that they set. It's just set. And then the other weird thing is you write a description. So in every other app store, when you write a description, your description appears verbatim on the thing. But then we notice what Amazon does is they actually rewrite your entire description. So they kind of take poetic license and they reformat it however they want, and there's no control over that either. Like, it's just bizarre.
So let's talk about what's happened since then. So this story broke a week ago. I mean, it went everywhere. I mean, it was broadcast everywhere. Every major tech blog covered it. Every mobile blog covered it. We're covering it. We're doing all these things. What's been the impact since then? Shifty Jelly, did it go through that kind of peak again and then back into the trough of despair, kind of into obscurity, or what's been the impact from this? Has there been any?
Yeah, there has. And the funny thing is the impact has been across the board. So our iPhone sales have increased. Our Google Market sales have increased. Obviously, people hitting our website has increased. And again, people think that's some kind of cold, calculated move. But how we could have seen that coming is completely beyond me. But yeah, it's been
Russell, it's brilliant.
It's been amazing, and there's actually been not a lot of a dip. So the sales, especially on the Android market, are just up, and most of that seems to be from the emails we're getting, people just saying, look, I had no idea. Like, I'm so sorry. I feel like I've taken advantage of you guys. Like, can I go and buy it on the Google market? And some people just say, look, I bought it. You don't have to answer by email, just letting you know. So that part of it has been really fantastic. Because like I said somewhere else, like, a lot of people assume that Android users are cheap and they'll only buy sort of ads, or not buy, they'll download ad-supported apps and that's just what they want. But, the response that we've had from Android people has been, amazing. They're like, happy to pay for quality apps, happy to support you guys. I just didn't realise I wasn't doing it when I got it, free.
See, that's one of the things that I love about the mobile space, and I think you've just witnessed this, regardless of how you got here or what happened to get here, is that, I'll pay for quality apps, and I think that that's the general feeling here, is that, especially in the Android marketplace, there's a criticism that as you said, that everybody's looking for free apps. And it's full of junk, and it's all free apps, and it is a little bit harder to turn into revenue. I mean, that's granted. Apple doesn't own the marketplace and operating systems for iOS, but they're like 80 times greater generating revenue with a smaller operating system base. So, I think that there's a finesse that Android hasn't built yet, but. What I love about the mobile industry is that we all have to support this in order for it to thrive. And so, developers like you guys, like Shifty Jelly, or any of the smaller development teams, we want you to build more products. So we want you to make money so you can go out and do this. And I think that's it sounds so utopian and hippie-like. But you see it in Silicon Valley with the open APIs, right? There's an API for everything, and saying go, use, build, innovate. And I think that's it spreads into situations like this, is that, I want you guys to survive. Everybody wants you guys to survive and build new product, because that helps our worldwide mobile ecosystem. And man, that you've just witnessed that, haven't you?
Yeah, like I said, it's been honestly astounding. And I can honestly say we've only had we had a lot of negative blog comments, but we've only had one negative email from someone. Like, out of the hundreds that we've had, one guy basically told us to stop being, so whiny and get back to work.
Yeah, and so now, what's next for you guys? You don't want to dwell on this, but you're riding a little bit of cult momentum, I would say, around what you guys have done, and I wonder how many developers would have done the exact same thing. So I love the fact that you're doing that, that you're open and honest, and you've revealed so much, and not only here but across all the other podcasts and blog posts. And in fact, you've actually become a hero because you were on Tech News Tonight on the Twit network, and like that's huge. So what's next for you guys after this? You just keep plotting. You've got a new release of the product that's coming out eventually, and then what?
I honestly don't know. I guess the basics are as two sort of developers, we really suck at marketing. We suck at planning for the future. And so, I mean, people say, yeah, you've got all this momentum, but the other thing about tech coverage is it tends to be quite fickle. You might not even know that we got an email from Steve Jobs like a year and a half ago, and we had the same sort of amazing coverage and whatever else. And after a week, no one remembers that. They just move on to the next story and the next thing. I think the only positive now is that, people who at least have our app know about us, and when we do release updates and we do potentially come out with a new product, and I guess we will one day, is that at least then we have more exposure, which can only be a good thing, really.
Yeah, it is, and I think that this is one of those things that maybe other voices will come out in support of this, and over the long term, maybe the terms and conditions that Amazon and other app stores use will be modified as a result of this. If there's enough backlash and enough negative media around this, and maybe these stores will actually then start to take into consideration the developer's perspective, and that you need a thriving, healthy ecosystem in order for them to succeed, right?
Yeah, I don't think we should forget that in the early days of dealing with Apple, it wasn't quite as bad, but it was still quite draconian. We got an app sort of pulled for a month without sort of any explanation. We used to get rejected for things that didn't exist in a formal document, and they have cleaned up a lot of that. Now they release the rules. They're quite good about it. If you ever get rejected now, it's for something that's in the rules. And they have changed. I guess there was that backlash. There was that sort of outcry, and they've changed. So yeah, maybe Amazon will too. Who knows?
Well, I have a story. Just we'll finish off here. Is that in one of my previous companies, we built our first iPhone app when the Appstore launched, and we didn't know quite whether or not we should launch it or not. We didn't know what the impact was going to be, and we hadn't done all of our testing on it, and we didn't set the trigger to say when it's launched, when it's approved, don't launch. So it was approved and launched, and people started downloading it, and it worked on 50% of the devices that was downloaded. And we did smaller numbers, maybe 4,000 or 5,000 a day that they were downloading, and we were getting hammered, right? 1 star everywhere, and being basically owned online. And so we went into the administration when we realized what was going on. We said, okay, we want to delete the app. We want to take it off the store, and they hadn't built that button yet. They hadn't built the button yet. So we were on with their support in Ireland, saying, "Listen, we need that app off. We delete it, turn it off." And they're saying, "Well, we haven't built the button yet. It's slated to be built in 6 days, and that's when it's going to be launched." I'm like, "No, you don't understand. It took us a week to get it off. That they finally just removed the reference from the database, but we were on there before the delete button. So I can understand the pain. It's like, no, I want this to stop. We're getting hammered here. They hadn't built the delete button. Yeah. It's like the last thing. And they said the support was going through okay, now just go to this screen. And we would go to that screen and say, okay, scroll down midway. There's the delete button. Like, no, it isn't there. And they had the documentation. And what a nightmare that was. But so maybe Amazon's process, they haven't finished it, right? It's not fully baked, but I don't, it's easy to get on. It must be hard to leave. It's like Hotel California. So what have I not asked you? Is there anything else? How do people find out about you guys if they haven't heard of you already?
We have a website, obviously, shiftyjelly.com. Even that needs updating. That's how much we suck at marketing. It pretty much says nothing about our Android apps.
No, it doesn't. It's all iPhone. Soon. It's like when you click on the, I mean, that's exactly it. You know, they're not disingenuous. You go to the products and it's just like iPhone, iPod, Touch, and iPad. There's no reference to Android whatsoever. I love it.
We're getting on that very soon.
The blog post is, at the top there's a Shifty blog. If you want to read about this, it's the first story in your blog about this whole experience.
If there's the Twitter and as well, so we're just Shifty Jelly on Twitter.
Okay. And well, look, you know, Russell, I really appreciate you coming on. This has been a great in-depth episode around not only this, when we spent 15 minutes on the Amazon challenge, but also what you guys are doing with Shifty Jelly, which is great. A great perspective to get from Australia. Love the lessons that you've imparted. Things like, you know, look local. You know, build for your own locale. You don't need to build globally. Read any document that you're about to sign, any legal document that you're about to sign. Oftentimes you don't have an option. You just have to sign it. But read it, understand what you're getting into, especially around kind of promotions or featured products or those kind of things. And also, you know, I think the last lesson that I would think about is that if ever approached by a company that wants to feature you as an application, a free app, like, say, Amazon or Apple or anybody, or Google, think about your infrastructure costs. So if you are a client-server type of thing, and that's what your application is, and if you're going to get 100,000 downloads, think about the impact of that and the costs associated with that, and balance it. Because if you don't, it could be totally disruptive to your business. It could put you out of business, and that's the last thing that we want to happen here. Is so you know, give it some deep thought, and then go forward if you can actually accommodate that. You know, so this has been amazing, really amazing. I really appreciate you doing this.
No problems at all. Thanks for having me on.
Well, so go to shiftyjelly.com, exactly as it sounds. Bring them in to do your IT administration and infrastructure development. I'd love to see somebody saying, yeah, this is our company, Shifty Jelly. Our security company, Shifty Jelly. I love it. Go to shiftyjelly.com and do us all a favor. And you're on an Android device, go to the Android marketplace, buy this application. You're on an iOS device, go buy this application. And then stay in touch, because I'm very interested when you release the new version with the ability to bookmark and specific locations within a podcast. I think this is an idea whose time has come. So, Russell, thank you for doing this. Appreciate it.
No, definitely thanks for having me on. It's been great.
For those of you who are watching, listening, wherever you may be, driving in your car, watching this on your Roku box, watching this online, really appreciate you sitting through this. I know that you found a ton of value. If you have any feedback or comments, reach out at untether@gmail.com. Go to shiftyjelly.com for more information about Russell and his team and all of the applications that they've done. Thank you for watching. Russell, thank you for being a part of it. We'll see you next time on untether.tv.